I was sitting in my office. I still remember sitting there, picking up a letter from Summit Carbon Solutions, reading it, and they were wanting to do this CO2 pipeline coming through several sections of our personal family land. Mm-hmm. And I was reading about it, and I was like, what is this? We were in the midst of a project with Northern Natural Gas, coming through, redoing a line from Sioux City to Sioux Falls, an old easement that was there. So I'm looking at this letter from Summit Carbon Solutions, and I'm like, yeah, not interested. We just got done with this headache of a project, or in the midst of it. And besides that, immediately I said, this is the Green New Deal. I knew instinctively it was, and saw it for what it was, and I just set the letter aside thinking, yeah, we'll just say no thank you. Well, that wasn't that easy. Not very long after that, I saw in our Republican blog, that kind of is the mouthpiece for our state Republican Party, that it said the Republican Party is going green. Well, that was the turning point for me, saying, okay, here we go. I better get out my seatbelt and buckle up. And so anyway, fast forward, I was elected into the legislature and ended up carrying some legislation for this particular project to say we are not, not necessarily even just for the project, but to say this is not something that we should be using eminent domain for. We have to have some boundaries here, and we need to define things. Yes, HB 1133, which was basically saying we are not going to use eminent domain for CO2 pipelines. And because it's not public use. It's not something that we're going to be using. My neighbor's not going to be using it. It's going to line the pockets of a few individuals. That's what it was about. CO2 is life. We need it for life. We need it for growing our plants. And you see some of these things in the greenhouses, they're pumping in CO2 and they're having better growth with more CO2. And so, I've been told CO2 in our atmosphere is at 0.04%. If we get down to 0.02%, plant life suffers. We suffer. We need CO2 to live. And so it makes no sense. I actually was in a stockholder meeting for one of the ethanol companies, and a farmer actually asked the question, how is this project going to impact my farming and the plants that I grow in my fields? And they said, actually, it's probably not going to have much of an impact at all. It's not really going to affect it, but this is a business opportunity. And I'm almost quoting that word for word. This is a business opportunity. But this is the World Economic Forum. This is the Paris Climate Agreement. This is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, 17 Sustainable Development Goals. That's what we're looking at. This is the same thing. And of course, we know Agenda 2030, the 30 by 30 land grab, we call it. It's all wrapped up into this. And this is about our food supply. And so that's really what I see where this is coming. And from the beginning too, I said, I did some reading and I saw that J.P. Morgan was pushing to use eminent domain for solar and wind. Well, now, just this last week, the Department of Energy has come out and said, basically, several different areas of the country, they are wanting to roll out projects for solar and wind. And it says right in the article that they are looking at condemnation for those. We were not told the truth from the very beginning, and I believe, again, it was the big hand of government joining with the big hand of corporate America, coming in using our tax dollars, and not only that, but our farm ground to do their project, to line their own pockets. And besides that, they were getting very valuable easements that they would have for perpetuity to come onto our ground at any time. They could convert this to a different kind of pipeline. We don't know what they might put through it. They could also mortgage these pipelines. They could lease them. They could sell them, even to foreign interests. And so, and again, that's a whole other aspect of this is the foreign investment. That's in specifically Summit Carbon Solutions. Navigator also, the biggest investor in Navigator was BlackRock. And we do know that China is involved to some extent. You can look this up online with the Silk Road Fund. Okay, so that is a very big issue. We have a bill that we just passed, and it was signed into law, that for certain countries that cannot buy ag land in South Dakota. Okay, but the Adjutant General during the Ag Committee meeting came up and said, we are very concerned about the Silk Road Fund. And I followed up saying, since that was brought up, Can we talk about that Silk Road Fund? Because we know that Summit Carbon Solutions does have ties to the Silk Road Fund. And it really was not addressed in the committee, and it just rolled on through. So we know the overall plan is 15-minute cities to move people off of their rural areas. And I mean, we have very valuable property here. You know, we are part of feeding the world. And so they see that. And if you want to control the world, you need to control the food. And so, and again, also with the energy, right? So we're looking at solar and wind, which are not very dependable sources of energy. We have very dependable energy right now. We have coal-fired power plants and nuclear energy. And so when you're looking at this big picture, it's like if you were the one in charge and you really wanted to control the people, you know you're going to have to control the energy, and you know you're going to have to control the land, which provides the independence and the food for the world. The question was asked, why are they going so close to acreages with these CO2 pipelines when they have a whole big spread of land? I know one guy, Mike Clipful, told me 7 miles to the south of me, there's nothing in between. Why don't they go halfway instead of coming right by my farm ground? Well, even if there was a hint of a leak with one of these, people would want to move. You know, you wouldn't risk your family's life to live next to the CO2 pipeline. Well, if you're going to move off your land, and all of a sudden that land, how much is it going to be worth to someone else? So who's going to come in and save the day? Well, either probably one of these big corporations or the government. So we have really got to be on the alert. You know, we always want to think that our politicians are out to defend us and our best interests. But listen, people, we have got to start thinking, actually, I think they're working against us. And that's exactly what we've seen here in South Dakota.